We always hear about looking for red flags in a relationship. But what if the really big signs aren't these huge dramatic moments? What if they're actually these subtle, quiet feelings that we try to push away? Well, today, we're going to dive into exactly that, the hidden signs that can tell you what's really going on.
If that question hits home, then you know the feeling I'm talking about. It's this constant, low-grade anxiety where you start to question everything. You ask yourself, am I being too sensitive? Or am I just making a big deal out of nothing? That feeling of confusion, that's not an accident. It's often the very first clue that something is really, truly off.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? The biggest warnings aren't always some big, obvious betrayal. No, often it's this slow buildup of tiny, unsettling moments. It's a feeling in your gut that your body picks up on way before your mind is ready to admit what's happening.
So, how do we start to make sense of these feelings? Well, one way is to think of them as a series of subtle tests. Now, these aren't tests you're setting up on purpose, not at all. They're just everyday situations that end up revealing the true character and health of your connection. Let's break down 6 of them.
Okay, our first test. This is one that happens all the time, maybe every single day, and it's all about how a person deals with things when they just don't go their way. So, think about this. How does your partner handle frustration? I mean the small stuff, like a restaurant mixes up your reservation. That should just be a minor annoyance, right? It shouldn't spiral into a huge outburst that completely tanks the entire night. If you see that little disappointments constantly trigger this massive, out-of-proportion anger or blame, well, that's a huge warning sign about their ability to handle life, and more importantly, their lack of empathy.
And that leads us right into our second test, which goes a little deeper into this idea of acceptance versus judgment. This one reveals how your partner reacts to the real, unfiltered you. The you that gets sick or makes a dumb mistake or has a family situation that's kind of messy. A healthy partner meets you in those moments with support. But an unhealthy one, they meet you with judgment or annoyance, making you feel like only the perfect version of you is okay to be around.
All right, our third test. This one might sound a little odd, but trust me, it's incredibly revealing when it comes to connection.
No, it's not literally about a bird. Of course not. It's actually a metaphor for all the tiny bids for connection we make all day long. The little things we point out or share, just hoping our partner will share that moment with us.
So a bid is really just any attempt to create a tiny shared moment. It's you saying, hey, look at this with me. Come be in my world for just a second. And these little bids, they might seem small, but they are the absolute building blocks of intimacy and trust.
And there are really only 2 ways to respond. A healthy partner turns towards you. They engage, even just for a second. But an unhealthy response is dismissive. They turn away. And when they consistently turn away from these tiny bids for connection, it just erodes everything, leaving you feeling totally alone and invisible in your own relationship.
The fourth test? This one often comes up when we are at our most vulnerable. And because of that, it's a profound measure of someone's character. How does your partner act when you're actually genuinely sick? A supportive partner shows care, simple as that. But for a toxic partner, your sickness is treated as an inconvenience to them. They might get huffy or annoyed or make you feel guilty for just needing to rest. It's a fundamental test of empathy, and it's a test they often fail spectacularly.
Number 5. This test gets right to the heart of manipulation, and it's about whether you can ever get a straight answer about anything.
So, what happens? What happens when you ask a direct question to try and hold them accountable for something they did or said? Do you actually get an answer, or do you get this dizzying whirlwind of deflection, excuses, and blame?
I mean, just listen to this classic response. You ask a simple question and you don't get an answer. You get a whole performance. It's a script full of martyrdom and blame shifting. Suddenly, the whole narrative is flipped, and now you're the bad guy. You're the one with the problem. You walk away feeling confused and guilty, and your original question is left hanging in the air, totally unanswered. And that brings us to our 6th and final test. This one is all about how they handle your light, how they handle it when you shine. So when you succeed at something, you get a promotion, you hit a personal goal, whatever it is, how does your partner react? Are they genuinely celebrating with you, or do they find a way to minimize it, to trivialize it, or maybe even make fun of it a little? A toxic partner just can't stand to see you shine because it challenges their need to be in control.
Okay, so we've got these 6 tests, but here's the thing. They aren't just a random checklist of bad behaviors. They're so important because they all point to the same consistent underlying pattern.
When you really connect the dots, these signs almost always lead back to three core issues. First, a fundamental lack of empathy, a real inability to feel with you. Second, a deep sense of entitlement, this belief that they are somehow owed your time, your energy, your everything. And third, a powerful, driving need for control, to always be the one on top in the relationship.
This whole dynamic creates this profoundly disorienting cycle. One source I read put it perfectly. It's like being pushed off of a 100-story building, only to have the same person who pushed you swoop in at the last second and rescue you. This pattern, seducer, perpetrator, rescuer, it's what makes the whole thing so confusing and so incredibly hard to leave.
But here's the good news. Understanding this pattern is the absolute key. It's how you move from that constant state of confusion and self-doubt to a place of real clarity and self-trust.
And I really want to stress this. Ultimately, this knowledge isn't about blaming your partner or labeling them. It's about gaining wisdom for yourself. It gives you a language, a framework to finally understand what you're experiencing. It helps you validate your own feelings and recognize that that gut feeling you've had all along, it's real. That's not blame, that is pure empowerment.
And that really brings us to the final thought. Seeing these patterns, that's the first step. The next, and honestly the most important one, is learning to trust yourself again. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. Now that you can see the patterns, what does trusting your own instincts actually look like for you? Because the answer to that, well, it could change everything.